Hi.
Oh my God.
Hi. This is the second time I've been here this early. I don't ever want to be here again this early, but it's going to happen again tomorrow. My name is Joseph Barquin. I coach Stern's policy team. I also coach San Marino's policy team. And I also coached at Southwestern College for the past 5 years. I will be doing the most fun lecture of them all. It's the research lecture. That's way more enthusiasm than I will ever give anyone in my life. So, research is probably the most boring and yet most fun thing you can do before you actually debate, right? Where's my clicker? Right? And why would research be fun, right? Why would research be a fun thing? It's because research is the time for you to take your strategies and actually conceptualize them, right? And it's also the time for you to be looking at stuff and be like playing with ideas. Without research, you don't get any access to that. Without research, you don't get to debate, right? The fundamental or the foundation of policy debate is evidence. If no one's cutting cards, we're doing parley. And I don't want to do parley ever again, right? So there's three things that we do with our research. The first one is topic research. You all had that in the first lecture where you all got the background, right, of the topic. The second one is one that's a little more like checking up on people. That's called card citation checks, right? If you don't trust the debaters. And then the last one is something you all will be doing the entire time you're going to be in policy debate, especially in open, because this topic forces you to do research. It forces us, because this topic is constantly moving. It is not static, right? Because international relations and international realism is always moving. So topic research. I think Joel gave you all this one, right? You have to know your resolution. You have to know every single country that we probably sell arms to, right? So what is the resolution? Well, I actually don't know it. The United States federal government should substantially reduce direct commercial sales and or foreign military sales of arms from the United States. Right? When you're doing your research, you are doing research of every single part of that word. Why? Because topicality exists. Right? If nothing else, you do the research on the resolution for topicality. There's entire file sets being put out right now in multiple camps just on the resolution. Just on every single word and what it could possibly mean. Because we get to define the rules of debate. We get to define what is an actual affirmative and what is not an actual affirmative based on the definitions we give it, right? That's the topicality thing that you all have had before. And because this is an international topic, you have to know all of the countries that we sell arms to. Right? So, objectives when you're doing research on the countries that you're doing. You have to know a bit about their cultures. Right? Not everyone acts like the United States of America. Our culture is way different from Japan's culture. Our culture is way different from South Korea's culture. Our culture is very different than Taiwanese culture. If you don't know that, you should probably start getting research on it. This topic is like taking US world history and world government at the same time. Congratulations, it's a lot of fun, right? What happens if you don't know what these things are, what the culture is of a given society, right? Your persuasion, when it comes to trying to persuade a judge to vote for you, goes down. If you sound like an ignorant person in the round, you're not going to persuade the judge to vote for you, right? Not all judges are created equal. You will not have a pure flow judge for a good chunk of your debates. And you have to be able to persuade them. If you don't know the countries that you're going to be talking about, good luck, right? If you're going to run a Syria app, and you don't know anything about Syria, good luck, right? Second thing, no, go back. What the heck? You have one job, right? You need to know the history of not just that singular country, but the region around it, right? You don't know enough about the Syrian conflict at all, I guarantee you. You don't. But if you do the research and watch a billion YouTube videos on how the Syrian conflict became the way it is, you might get some really good background of the history of the area. So that when you do the arms sales, you could reduce arms sales to ISIS. Who knew we sold arms to ISIS? Right? For a good chunk, we did. We never given things because of proxies. They exist. But that could be a topical app. Now, does it have holes? A lot of holes, right? That's the thing, right? If you don't know the history of your given area, you can't argue about it. Because this is a history topic. You have to, right? If we reduce arms sales to, say, Taiwan, why is it important? Well, because in the 1970s, we signed a pact with them to give them arms for a form of defense. Right? If you don't know that, then why do we have arms with them? Right? So you need to know the history of that given area, specifically that country. The next part is current events. Not only the history, but what is happening now. This is a unique topic. That uniqueness evidence on everything is going to constantly shift because the world of politics is always shifting, right? Something could happen in Taiwan that may change everything within your apps or negs that you all have to keep current of, right? When we do disadvantaged research, it's all on the uniqueness level once you've gotten the shell done. Why? Because we need to know the current events, right? Yesterday, Trump threatened more tariffs on more Chinese goods. That's a current event thing that's happening. So you have to be concurrent of things going around, not in just the US, but in the topic areas that you all are going to be debating with, right? And lastly, which is actually way more than one, is the political situation of that given area, right? You need to know why do they need the arms sales. It's probably because to deter military conflicts or something really close to it, right? If you don't know why we have arms sales to begin with, then we're in trouble because it's usually to deter conflict or escalate conflict, right? Arms sales is a sort of like conflict multiplier or a divider, or additive or subtractive, one of those. But you need to know the general conflict area or the conflict history of that area, right? Because all your war impacts are predicated on like conflicts, right? One of the major impacts that we have in debate is war. You just have to know about war, and war in different regions occurs differently, right? The terminal impact to war is probably going to be nuclear war, but the scenarios are always going to be different. And if you don't know what it is, we're going to be in trouble, right? You need to know how they interact with each other, not just from like a military perspective, but like a diplomatic perspective too. President? Do we use diplomats? Do we use Congress? How do other countries deal with their diplomatic relations, right? One of the major counterplans for this topic is the consult counterplan. If we don't have good relations with a country, do we consult them? No. But we're allies with Japan. If we're going to do a reduction of sales to Japan, maybe we might want to consult Japan, right? Because they are an ally. But how do you know that if you don't know? If you haven't done the research about whether or not we have good relations or bad relations with any given country. At the same time, what are the relationship between the country and the region around it, and probably the world, right? Is it an outlier in world politics that's not really involved? Or is it like very involved in creating policies that affect the entire globe, right? You have to know that kind of stuff. And finally, internal politics, right? Just because we sell arms to a country doesn't mean it benefits the country as a whole. There's political situations within the country itself that change on a daily that you all have to know, right? Elections are a thing. The elections dissad is going to be a major thing you all have to keep track of the entire time. And that's all internal political situations that affect the globe, right? Same thing with us. The countries that you all are going to be researching about deal with their own internal conflicts that may change how they deal with arms sales and the result of reduction of it, right? Literature will change based on the internal politics of the given country. So, the card citation check. This is one that is fun and also not fun if you get it done to you and you lose, right? So, we create cards in a very specific manner. And one of them is to create a citation so that we can figure out where those cards come from, right? If you give me a piece of evidence, I can go after the round or even during the round if the tournament allows me to have internet access and look it up, especially if it has a URL. Especially if it has a URL. I can literally go online, bring it up. Why is that important? Because sometimes people cut the pieces of the card that only pertain to them, and they don't include all of the context of that card. Right? It may be an important thing for you after the round, after you've lost that round, and be like, wait, this evidence was devastating. Let's look it up and see if there are any holes in it. Right? Let's look it up. See if there's any holes. Why? So you can win the next round. Right? Or, even worse, you look it up and it doesn't exist. That is the worst thing possible that you can probably imagine as a debater when you get called out and says your evidence is fake. But how do you know that if you don't actually look it up? Right? A lot of the critique stuff that LAMDL likes to read on the neg, right? You all need to not just read the literature of the card, but you need to read the literature of the book to fully understand it. Research is not just reading the card, or reading where the card came from and all the things pertaining to it, right? If my book that I'm citing is about 200 to 300 pages, and you want to get really good at beating me, read the book. Now, is it going to take some time? Yeah. Policy debates tough consuming. It's a given. But if you know the lit better than the debater that you're facing, guess what? You have a higher chance to win. Right? There are some rounds where it just becomes a lit check. Who knows the lit better than other people? And those are like some of the deepest rounds that you can possibly have because everyone knows what they think everyone knows what they're talking about, and it's up to the judges to parse it all out. Right? But if you know the evidence better than they do, then you're at a good place. Right? So, evidence research. Right? That's literally cards. A lot of cards, and a lot of cards. During my debate career, I had about 300 pounds of paper evidence that I got to debate with, and I knew every single card within it. Because to not know it means I don't have all the weapons possible to win a round. It's not only because I read it all, but I contributed a good chunk to all those pounds of evidence. Right? I would do research every night if I could, to cut more updates, to cut more cards, because the more knowledgeable I was, the better chance I had to be bigger schools with more budget, with more coaching, right? I couldn't completely compete with them in that regard, but I could get good at my own arguments, and that's what I focused on, right? So there's a structure when you create evidence, and it's a pretty normalized structure at this point, right? The first thing is you have to have a tag. This tag usually tells you what the card is talking about, and it's usually just the claim for policy debate, and it's a claim plus maybe a few warrants in a K debate. This is important. If your tag does not match your text, you are in trouble. That means you're lying to me. That means you can get checked and be like, yo, your tag doesn't actually say what it does, right? One of the cards, a few of the cards in our packet doesn't say what the text says. How do you know that if you didn't read it, right, to match it up? Second one is citation, right? This is where you give enough information for everyone to be able to access your data. You probably want to have the author and why, and that author's qualification. Can anyone tell me why author qual could be very, very important in a round? Anyone?
Because it could be just like a random guy from Facebook or something.
And why is that bad?
Because he doesn't know anything.
Right, so would I prefer someone a newspaper when we're talking about global nuclear war? Do I want someone who's been researching about international conflicts for a really long time? Right? Quality of your author matters in a lot of these rounds. Now, I'm not saying quality is the only defining force, because there are third-party evidence that will not qualify the authors because it is dangerous for them to out themselves. Right? The world is a very dangerous place. Not all authors will give out themselves. They may have aliases. We have to deal with that, but you have to give why they have that alias. Right? You have to have enough research on your author. You're like, yeah, they're not going to give themselves out because the CIA exists. Right? It just is. The NSA exists. They don't want to out themselves. You should probably cite the article name so that people can just look it up online really quickly if they don't want to go through the URL. Right? The place where it came from, i.e. the the publishing source, right? Usually it's, I don't know, let's pick CNN, right? You would write CNN. And then the article name, blah, blah, blah. The date you accessed it and the date it was produced. These are very, very important, right? In case someone does an evidence check on you and say your stuff doesn't exist, and be like, well, it existed during that time, right? And I have an extension. That doesn't mean I cheated. It's just the website just took out that thing for whatever reason. And it does happen. Sometimes websites just die, right? Funding stops. But if you have an extension, you're fine. And be like, well, okay, the entire website history is gone because it just doesn't exist anymore. That doesn't mean I'm a bad scholar. It just means I can't use that card in the round if they do challenge it. It means you go look for more, right? And if you don't have an extension to something, you should probably get an extension to all your arguments.
What if they do use a card that was from a page that was completely deleted?
I can't hear you, what?
What if they do use a card that was from a page that was completely deleted?
Then you'd be like, we can't take this into account in this debate because we don't know if it's real, right? But the great thing about research is you're not producing just one card of an argument, you're producing multiple cards of an argument, right? You need to have extensions of everything that you say. Even the evidence that you say should have extensions in case the other team just straight up challenges it. No, the argument you said is still wrong. Here's more reasons why my thing matters, right? You have to have extensions, right? Because people will clash and they will try to beat you, so you need to have more evidence than them, especially if you're neg, because the neg block exists, right? You probably want to include the URL, so it's a lot easier to access it instead of like having them to Google it. If there's no URL, you need to give like ISBN or that thing where they can just look up the number and they can figure out exactly where it is, because we now just like have numbers for all the books in the world. After the citation, you should probably have the actual body of your evidence. This is the data of your evidence. You pick paragraphs. Keyword here is paragraphs. You don't pick a sentence in a paragraph and cut it and paste it. Why would you not do that? And I've seen this. I've seen this a bunch of times last year, and I was like, what is this? What? That's not an evidence.
You know the context.
Right, context matters a lot. The paragraph itself creates context. Sometimes you want to have the paragraph above it and the paragraph below it that you're going to use as evidence, so that you can create context not only for yourself, the competitors, but more importantly, the judge. When the judge calls up your cards, they're reading all of it, and they're analyzing it. And if they don't have any context to deal with, they may not vote for you, right? How do I know your warrant is true? Well, there was analysis on top that was not underlined that proves it, right? There was analysis on the bottom that proves it. What happens if there's paragraphs on the top that contradict you? Don't cut it, right? Well, if the other team checks it and they cut that part, oops, you lost the debate, right? Next thing is underlining. Underlining is important because you don't want to read the entire paragraph, because then you'll be reading like 4 cards in a round, and you lose because you don't have the link, impact, alternative, solvency stuff, right? Underlining is a way to just like pick your claims and pick your warrants and just deal with that. You want your underlining to be complete sentences. Please let them be complete sentences. Like you can pick and choose how the underlining goes, but when I say it, it should be a complete sentence. If it's an incomplete sentence, it's just not as persuasive, and you look like really bad, and it just doesn't look good on you. Right? And finally, the highlighting. This is the bare minimum you need that has the claim on the warrant that includes the underlining. Right? The highlighting should be way less than the underlining because we're going for word efficiency, especially if you're doing policy rounds in the policy world, right? The more cards you can read, the more probability that you probably win, especially if you can spin the story of those cards really, really well. I'm not just saying cards are the end-all be-all, but they help you when you're actually arguing and talking about your arguments. If you can refer to multiple cards to beef up your position, you're in a good place. So highlighting down is really important. It also forces you to read the evidence if you didn't cut it. Right? How do you know what you said if you never really read it and you're just like regurgitating? Well, if you're the one doing the highlighting, you have some context then to deal with. It's better if you do the actual card production But sometimes you actually have a squad or you have a partner that's willing to help you out. Right? They should do the underlining, and if you're going to read it, you do the highlighting. Right? Or if you trust each other, both of you do the highlighting, and in cross-ex, you can deal with like cross-ex things on that like sort of like machine. So this is an example of a card. I hope to God this is not the first example of a card you've ever seen, because then we're going to have trouble. Right? So you see a tag, you see the citation, and you see a body with a bunch of underlines, right, that have complete sentences that include the claims and the warrants of that article that you want to use, right? And then you have the highlighting, which is a condensed version of it. Right? This is what a policy card should look like. It looks very efficient. It looks like it would take about 20 seconds to read at full speed, maybe 15 seconds to read, based on the amount of highlighting there is. And it's a card. That's literally all it is. Right? Now this is a card too, but what's missing?
Highlighted.
How long is this going to take me to read?
About 8 minutes.
30 minutes.
45.
Notice the difference when I say 20 seconds to a minute? That's 40 seconds you just wasted. I could probably highlight that down to maybe 20 to 25 seconds. Right? When you see that, you should be a little bit happy inside. But also, if this is a critique card, you should be like, oh no, I have to actually figure this out. Right? Next card. Can anyone guess how long this would probably take? Right? This would take about 30 seconds. Maybe 35. But like highlighting is not just limited to one color. If you choose to do multiple highlights, say you find that there's a better way to say it because there are different like warrants in it that you want to like pull out, you may want to use 2 highlights. Now you're going to confuse a lot of people, but if you tell them the green part, or just the yellow part, or just the blue part, or all of it, right? You should tell the judge and the competitors which ones you've read, especially if they ask you which parts did you read, right? But you should be reading along with them, and not just like flowing. Or you should be listening, figure out what they're saying, and not just like flowing, right? Next. Another incomplete one, right? Because this will take you about 1.5 minutes to read. But yeah, it's a good card, right? As the claims, warrants, data, citation, and a place to look for. All your cards should kind of follow these sorts of like structures. Next. So there's multiple types of evidence. Why? Because there are multiple types of arguments, right? Every argument that you make can be substantiated with a piece of data, right? And I hope to goodness you've gone off through all of this, right? Because you are in it, or transitioning to it. Now, why is producing cards for every one of those important? Why? Right? Because this creates a case, this creates dissads, this creates counterpoints, this creates critiques, this creates answers to all of them. These are the sorts of arguments that are read and round, and everything should be carded. Everything should have a card. Right? Every file set should have a card on all of these things. If you're not done typing or writing, we'll get back to it. Yes. So, inherency and uniqueness. This is literally saying this is what's happening around the world. Right? Uniqueness cards, the newer the better. The newer the better. Especially on the dissad level. If your uniqueness card is 6 months old and the other team reads a uniqueness card that's 5 days old, guess who wins on the dissad?
They do.
Right. So the newer the better. And there's a lot of dissads on this topic where uniqueness will matter a lot. So why is inherency important? Because it tells you that the plan hasn't happened yet. This is what's happening in the status quo. That's not the plan, right? We have arms sales for this country. That proves that the plan isn't happening yet. But uniqueness and inherency is all about the status quo. All about the status quo. There's one is for the app and one is for the net. Links. Right? For the app, this is the thing that connects your inherency to why the impact is occurring, right? For the neg, it's the app leads to certain things that are bad. But links are in both types of, they're both in the app, they're both in the neg, and for critique cards, links are where we live in. Right? For critiques, the better the link, the better substantially warranted the link is, the easier it is for you to contextualize the link, the easier it is for you to win the debate. Right? There is nothing worse than reading a link card without enough contextual spin, because then you can't spin in the block. If your link cards don't have enough warrants in it, then you lose the link debate. Right? Links are where you want to garner a lot of offense versus an app if you're running a critique. So a link card that's say 2 pages long that takes you 2 minutes, that's fine. It's totally fine. It doesn't have to only take 10 seconds. If your link card takes 10 seconds, you probably need to read 5 more in the block. You don't want to read 5 more link evidence in the block. The block should be there, especially if you're a critique debater, to expand, persuade the judge to vote for you based on the theory of power you're going to posit versus the theory of power of the F. Right? Moving on. Impacts. This is probably one of the easiest ones to conceptualize, because literally the bad things that are happening in the world as a result of the link. Right? They can be structural violence, they can be nuclear war, they can be famine to extinction, they can be ecological disaster through warming and ice ages, things that are just really, really, really bad. And we want to prevent that through the plan, the counter plan, or the alternative. Right? Next. The plan / alternative and the solvency. This is where a good chunk of your debate goes to as well. Right? If you're debating plan versus K, and they're both in the same direction, i.e. they're both leftist in nature, a good chunk of the debate will be who solves better. Right? There's a link. The link matters a lot too, right? But if you can't explain your plan and why it solves the harms of the status quo, or you can't explain why your alternative solves the harms of the neg, you're going nowhere. And you want these to be carded out, right? When we say alternative in a debate round, we usually have a card after it. Why? Because we want to prove that it works, right? That it is a viable means of an alternative to the theory of power posited by the F. The F, if you don't have solvency, what happens? You lose, right? Because you have to have one of those as your main pillars for the F. You have to change the status quo. You have to prove your plan can resolve something bad, right? And that's through the solvency. Right? You don't want to use the solvency cards, though, as the tag for your plan text or the alternative text. Those should be separate, right? If your alternative says reject the F, and there's not a hyphen through it with an actual card below it, you're in trouble. Because that's not an alternative text, right? You can't look at the alt in a vacuum. You can't. Because then it allows the neg to just spin it however they want, because tags mysteriously change. And we don't really refer to them as tags anymore once the debate is going, because you should be fleshing out warrants in the arguments that the author is talking about without having to repeat the card's tag themselves. Right? If you repeat a card's tag, that means you're doing the debate wrong. Right? It's all about warrants, putting the warrants in your own words. So defense, the fun one. It's pretty simple. Right? Why is defense important though? It's right up there. Someone, repeat it. Right? What happens if another team drops a defensive argument? Right? If your impact is the economy, leads to global nuclear war, and the other team is like, no, that's never happened. Prove it. Right? And you have empirical, you don't even need empirical data. You can be like, I'm still alive. I haven't seen a global nuclear war in any of my history books. Right? If the other team drops that, defense becomes true, and you win. Right? You should always have defense against multiple parts of any given position. And if it's carded, it's even better. Right? Everything needs to be carded in a debate, especially in policy, if at all possible. Right? Next. A turn. Right? A turn is literally saying what you're saying either we can do, or what you're saying is actually bad or good. The link turn. Can anyone give me an example of a link turn? No one? Okay, so we're going to say that the act leads to more capitalism, right? And capitalism is bad because it leads to environmental destruction. The act could be like, no we don't. We don't lead to more capitalism. We actually are a reduction capitalism. We help the environment because of it, right? We solve your position. We can do your position under ours. That's a link turn, right? You can link turn the initial link all the way to the internal link, right? To resolve the impact. The impact turn is a very sketchy place that you probably only want to research environmental link turns, okay? You never want to link turn genocide or impact turn genocide. Why? Because you're a cool human being and you actually just deserve to lose. Right? There are very few times you want to impact turn nuclear war, unless your nuclear war results in winter that doesn't kill us all, why DDEV is important. Right? I'm pretty sure none of you all are familiar enough with the DDEV arguments to just go for it every time. Jonathan, no. Right? That was not coached. I did not tell him to run DDEV. Right? There are very few times you go for the impact turn. The only times you should is if you need it to win the round, and you pretty much know they're not going to be able to answer it because they don't have like DDEV answers, right? But the warming debate is very interesting because it's a very political debate, and both the left and the right have entrenched themselves, right? And won't budge. So if one team just wins that warming isn't real or warming is good because it results in more agriculture being made to feed the world, and they just outcard you 30-1, I guess warming is good, and I'm voting for the team that's impact turn warming, right? Warming is probably the only place I do the impact turn. Please, let it be the only place you do the impact turn. Next. So, where do you find evidence? And I know this is going to be a little hard because you all are high schoolers, you don't have exposure to a lot of like research, right? You don't have access to a lot of databases. There's quite a few places to look for research. Right? First one is Google. Hooray. Duh. Right? The search engine exists. There are multiple ways to game the search engine to help you out. And I'll give you some tips to do that. Like this lecture was not going to be just Google tips. Because that would be done in 5 minutes and then I would go take a nap. And that would be a disservice to you. Right? Second one is something called LibGen, and one is arg.fail. For LibGen, you don't need an account. Right? It gives you access to multiple journals, articles that have been taken by people and put it up into that database. For arg.fail, if you need it, and I suggest you all get it, you can email me, and I will give you all my email at the end of this thing, so that you can have access to collections of articles and books by major authors that are important, especially if you're in a critique debate, right? Buying books is expensive. If you can get it for free, you should get it for free. arg.fail has given me enough cards to win some rounds for my debaters, right? And you know what? Maybe sometimes you just want to read about it. Sometimes you want to know about economic policy. Sometimes you want to know about history of queerness, right? What the Stonewall Riot was about. Sometimes you just want to know about that kind of stuff. The next one is Google Scholars. This one's important because this gives you not only just the Google part, but a very specific part of Google that deals with published articles that are peer-reviewed usually, right? And that gives you weighted evidence when you're doing comparison of article quality, right? The next one is major news organizations, i.e. BBC News, CNN, Reuters, etc., etc., etc. Please try not to use Fox News. Just don't, because they're not really. I mean, they're news, but they're not. Whatever. Political organizations, right, that create their own articles, right? I was a Marxist debater the entire time I was debating. I coached it for a good chunk of time. A lot of my evidence is from Marxist websites, because that's where I get my evidence, right? If you need evidence from a very specific political platform, because that is the type of platform you're doing, good. If you're doing, say, from last year's topic, the Zapatista, right? There are some political organizations that support it. Why don't you cut evidence from them, right? They probably give you really good evidence because they're trying to persuade people to either be part of the movement or support the movement. Right? The next one is journals. Literally go to the library, see if they have journals of any given thing that you're thinking about, and see if they have it. If you have friends in college that have access to databases, they get journals too. Right? I have quite a few friends in multiple universities around the US that I can be like, hey, I'm not affiliated with the university right now, could you help me find this thing? It's in this journal. Right? Find it. Next one is paid databases. This is usually something we will not get access to unless we're really, really into debate. Even then, but that's what college debaters are for, right? And that's what friends are for in college. That's what professors are for in college. This one is actually the best one because I've gotten a lot of help when it comes to like getting evidence, and that's Facebook. Right? All debaters should be on Facebook. If not the social aspect, but the research aspect. There's quite a few groups, right? I put 2 of them. The first one is probably the most important one if you want access to sites, right? Ask for PDFs from people with institutional access. It's actually a group. Like if you want evidence and you want easy access to evidence, all you have to do is find what the heck the article is called, what it is called, ask if anyone has any access or PDFs to it, and they will more than likely give it to you. This group gets over 300 or 400 like searches a day by people that have access, that are willing to help, right? Why don't you use them? It's there, it's free, you don't need it. Like it's not a closed group, it's an open group. Use it. It's not there just for people in college or people who are trying to get PhDs. It's there for you all to get access to. Right? I have access to it. I ask for PDFs all the time. I usually get them back. If they don't, they tell me avenues or alternative avenues I can probably get it out. Right? They're very helpful individuals. And the last one is, this is actually because debaters created this, is debate PDF requests. This one's a little slower, but if you're looking for like core literature bases on the topics you're interested in, so you're really interested in the queerness debate, or the set call debate, or the anti-blackness debate, right? There are some core lit bases in each one that if you ask for those books, they will more than be happy to give you those books, or the entire Google file with all of the books within that lit base. That's good, right? Next. So Google tips and tricks, the fun part. I didn't include everything because I'm actually not that great with Google. The first one is using quotations. When you put quotations in any given word, it automatically zooms into those articles and tries to find those quotations or the words within those quotations, right? So 2 to 3 words, put them in a quote. Google will automatically search its entire database for all of those words. And if you can find it, you've now probably gotten a card. Because debaters usually put debate stuff in those quotations, right? The next one is using semicolons, right? That means you're looking for a very specific term in a specific website. Like you pretty much know which website you're going to use, right? I use monthly review because it's my main Marxist source for cards. And I use militarism because it's a thing in this topic. So every time I do that for this specific search term, I will get every article that has militarism built into it from that specific website. Right? I don't have to, some of these websites don't have search functions. They just don't. Google allows you to have search functions within those websites. That's a hack. You don't want to go through entire databases and look through their archive. That gets really boring and really not fun. So if you can just speed that up by using Google itself to search, even better for you all, right? The third one is the asterisk search. This one's a little weird, right? This one tries to find the first word, the last word, and the middle word in between in that specific order. So the word nuclear or global will be on the front half of the article, the word nuclear may be in the middle, and the word control may be in the end, or it literally may go global nuclear control, right? That's important if you're looking for context for your things, right? If you can't find it in the quotations, you have to get creative because sometimes articles just don't want to give you the card. Sometimes you have to actually do a little more creative search for them. Next one is using similar sites, right? If you know one of your sites is really, really good on this question, but you're having problems finding more articles and cards to cut from it, why don't you do that and see if there are sites similar to it, and maybe they publish even more articles on the subject that you're interested in. What a great way to live, right? I didn't have access to this when I was a debater. That just wasn't a search term. Actually, I had to figure out which similar sites and then use their search functions to see if there are any similar articles to it. Right. The next one, searching more than one word. You can do that. And if you put them in quotations, then it's searching for both of them within the article. Right? And this is if you really need to get hyper specific and you pretty much know they're going to be together in an article. Sometimes it just doesn't work. Don't force it. Don't force a card to just be there. Sometimes if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And the last one I use is the debate synonyms. This one I actually encountered with Cuban while he was at DDI this summer, right? He was telling me I can't find a card about this. It was like, no one cuts cards saying corruption is good. What? That's not a thing, Cuban. So you have to create synonyms for it that are within the political realm that you're researching, right? So we picked economic regulation or economic deregulation to deal with like political economic corruption, right? And he found cards. He found like 3 or 4 within a few articles because he used synonyms similar that are debatey, but not really debatey, right? Any more time? You all good?
Yeah.
Move on?
Yeah.
Okay, move on. Cutting cards, the fun part. Fun part. Right? First, you make the site. You copy the URL down, you paste it, and you take away the formatting. You always have to take away the formatting, especially if you only have black ink. Right? Back in my day, we had to print every single piece of evidence we had. Ink is expensive. If we randomly use color evidence, we get yelled at. Here's the thing, right? You should probably include all the stuff about the citation above or earlier. Then you need to copy and paste the paragraphs that you're choosing for your card. Don't paste the entire article if you don't need to. Some of these articles are 20 and 30 pages long. Right? Some of the monthly review articles I've read are 50 to 60 pages long. Am I really going to read all that? No. So just figure out where the cards are and copy and paste those portions. Right? If you want to be like, I don't want to look at that, like, if you know there's a card at some place, you can copy the entire thing, but you're going to cut and paste it regardless. You're going to delete entire paragraphs to create multiple cards, right? The next part is to underline the claims and the warrants within that given paragraph. This one's the harder part because it forces you to read it and be like, what is this card actually saying? It's saying that deterrence is a thing and it prevents global conflict, right? Why? Then you underline the warrants. And then finally, you highlight it all down, right? So that you can say it in as little amount of time as possible while keeping enough of your claim and warrant intact so that you can expand upon it in later speeches. Okay, so I'm going to give you all a quick example of how to cut a card. I am physically going to cut a card that I've seen maybe 5 minutes of. Right? So I just picked markets and Trump through my Google search, and I came up with this. Right? So the first thing I did was copy, and look, I already pasted it. Right? So I have my.
It's not on the screen.
It's not on the screen. How does this work?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to card. So there's a Forbes article, right? Forbes is like, you have an ad blocker, please turn it off. I was like, ah, that's cute. Right? So I copied. Then this doesn't exist. And I paste keep text only. Why? Because if I keep source formatting, it turns into this. I don't want that. I want it to be as easy as possible for me. Right? It goes in the end, because it always goes in the end. So, this is by Naeem Aslam, right? So I picked their last name. This was made on August 2nd, 2019. So this is a uniqueness card on the economy. Guess what matters? The date. So I don't actually write just the year. What is this? 8, right? Yeah, 8, 2, 19, right? Copy the article title in quotation. Oh, that's not it. Close it. By Naeem Islam. Do I know who that person is?
No.
No. Right.
It's on the right side.
Contributor.
The heck?
So
What's your occupation?
no. So what? Reading this qualification, what are y'all getting? He's pretty much an expert on the economy, right? Right. So he's an economist, right? So I put economic expert, right? With multiple. Well, no, we'll just pick economist, right? Or Forbes and other organizations. He just doesn't do this. Okay, so I've given an author call. Where's this from? Forbes.com, right? Good, let's go. Right, date access. You always want to include date access and actually say date accessed. This is important. So what's today's date? The 3rd. So date accessed. 8/3/19. Right? Date published, right? 8/2/19. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We're all on the same page?
Yeah.
Then just finish this off. Citations. That didn't take a long time. All the information is given to you, right? Now this is a pretty decent article, actually. I'm gonna copy and paste all of it because I may want to use all of it, right? And I have read the article, and it is not bad. Right? Delete all non-relevant portions, i.e., this stuff. Are you gonna use all this? Probably not. Right? This gets longer. Right, so that's it, right? So we read all the article, and we're about to underline a good chunk of it. And I'm only gonna do a partial underlining because I only want a really quick claim of warrant, right? I just want an argument that this article is telling for me. And because I know it is about markets, and I know it about the economy, and it's giving me current situations about the economy and the market, it's probably a uniqueness card on the econ debate or the market debate, right? So, I'm looking for that. Right? So I need like futures and markets are in massive turmoil as a result. Right? Said that's an underline. Right, and I will pick this part. Right, so I'm only gonna keep this part. I want it to be really quick and simple, right? So I delete this. And I'm gonna be honest with you, this card is way better on the bottom part than it is on the top part. It is really, really good. I just delete all of it. That's it, right? This is the data portion of your card. Now, do I want to highlight it down? At this, I don't think so, because this is only like 3 sentences, right? But how am I going to tag this? Can anyone tag this for me, given the underlining I've given? Can anyone give me a tag? Anyone? Do I have to do this? Right, read this. This is really quick. Right? Go.
So it would be like Trump's new increase in tariffs will lead to backlash from China. New tariffs imposed to China will lead to China backlash.
Sounds awesome. I think the first one was better.
China backlash.
Right, that's a card. Literally cut, tag, cite it in 5 minutes. Is that impossible to do? I think you all can do it. Like, quite honestly, you all are not bad individuals when it comes to video. You all just need to practice. And I've been doing this for a very long time. I'm actually not the best card cutter in the world, because I only cut Marxist cards. Right? What's uniqueness? I haven't cut uniqueness in a really, really long time. Right? But there's only so many arguments that you can make. Right? Here's the uniqueness for the economy and markets right now. Trump's tariffs will create retaliation by China, creating futures market uncertainty. Right? That's a card. You're literally done. Right? And that's what this lecture is supposed to teach you, to be able to do that. Right? And because this is probably one of the hardest skills to learn, right? I've done the work and given you all worksheets, so you all can practice some of the skills that's necessary to be efficient card cutters. Worksheets. There's 16 pages to these worksheets, right? All the coaches will have this available to them later on when I put it all on the Slack. And guess what?
We're not going to get the slideshow.
I know, but they will get the Slack and they can give you the worksheets as assignments. Hooray! Alright? Everyone needs to practice cutting cards, because it's not just like, oh, I want to do this and just do it. You actually need practice doing it. You need practice tagging cards. You need practice underlining cards. You need practice highlighting cards. You need to figure out what the warrants and the claims are of any given card. You can't just like push it all and pretend you're going to be amazing. Everything in debate needs practice. Even research needs practice. My first cards were horrible. Absolutely horrible. My coach would be like, this isn't a card, redo it. And I'd be like, no, this is a card. I think I did well. And be like, no, it doesn't say anything. There's no warrants. There's no warrants that are underlined. The highlighting doesn't make a complete sentence. The tag is wrong. Or why does your tag not say what's being underlined? It doesn't match. Don't force the card to say what it doesn't say. Right? But the only way you can do that is by practice. It took me about 2 months to be decent, so that my coach wouldn't just give me back my cards and tell me to redo it. Right? And now I tell that to my players. They're like, no, this isn't a card. Do it again. Right? And we do that. It's a cycle. Right? And now I don't have to, like my team at San Marino, I don't ever have to tell them this card is bad. We do this. You literally tagged the site and the warrant and use that as a tag. That's not a thing. That makes you really lazy, especially if it's a critique. Right? So Bao and Jonathan are going to hand out sheets of paper, and you all will have the next 30 minutes to do them here. This is why you will have access to me, Bao, and Jonathan. If you need any help in learning how to tag cards, highlight cards, and underline cards, right?
Good lecture.
And if you need access to arg.fail, I'm going to include my email. And I can give you an invite when I respond to it. Please, please send me an email. I want you all to succeed. Right? I should be getting like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 40 emails within like the next hour. Be like, could you please give me access to arg.fail? though, if you just give me a random email with like no subject or like no body, I don't know who that's from. I'm gonna delete it. I get a lot of emails today. Sorry, right? But I'm giving you access to a free database. A lot of really good articles. Use it. Because why not? Right? Make sure there are 16 pages to this. Count them. If there's anything missing, blame Bao and ask for better ones. And we're going to be available for the next half hour to help you all. Right? So you all should have a pen. And the first exercise is to tag things. This is going to force you to read the cards, so you can actually tag what the cards say. All of these cards are relevant to this topic. You might actually use some of these cards in your debates. None of this card is from LAMDL. None of this is from LAMDL. You may use it in subsequent debates that are not termed tomorrow. If I see any of you use this tomorrow, you're gone. There are no rewards. You're just going to get shamed. It's not going to do it. Yeah, the first part is take a tag.
I think mine's missing a page.
They're missing